I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Vengreso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And I've got a treat for you guys. Yes, I do. I always say this, I know, but I just love talking to sales leaders. And yes, I'm very excited to have Mr. Mike Cabot with Moogsoft here on my show. He is the CRO, and we're going to be spending some time talking about, hey, sales leaders, what do you do when you come into an organization and you're looking at taking it from this level to, of course, the next level of success? So, Mike, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. And so do me a favor, just give everybody a little bit of background about first Moogsoft and you and your history. And then I've got a very special question I want to ask you.
Okay, sounds good. So I live in the Bay Area. I've been a startup guy for a long time. I love startups. I love the speed and the pace of it. I'm currently at a company called Moogsoft. We help companies ensure uptime of their applications and environments. So if you think about if you're going on a flight somewhere, you want to make sure that those systems don't go down, or if you're using your banking app, that it's there and you can access it. Insurance companies, things like that, and so that's our primary job. In terms of my background, in addition to that, again, I've worked in cybersecurity. I've worked a lot of time in sales tech and MarTech, so I've done sort of a variety of things, but really passionate about startup work and sales in general.
Fantastic. All right. Very good. And how many years have you been with Moogsoft? Almost 2, right?
Almost 2. Yeah.
All right. Congratulations. You are making it right there, right past the CRO cutoff line, which is very good. Obviously, you're doing the right things over there at Moogsoft in terms of making moves, adds, and changes and shaking things up, bro. So special question. Everybody gets asked this question, and I'm looking for something juicy, Mike. I don't want you to hold back. Just don't confess any grave sins. And that is, tell us something about yourself that nobody knows, even if they're looking at any or all of your social channels.
Okay. I only wear one brand of t-shirts, and I almost only wear one brand of sneakers.
I thought you were going to say underwear.
No.
All right. Wait, is that because it just happened, or is something that you're like consciously, your feet are too big and there's only one brand that actually fits, or you're like, what's the story there?
Well, no, the shirts, I just found this one brand they're just the most comfortable t-shirts ever. So it's just, if I'm gonna wear a t-shirt, it's like the only thing is acceptable. So I probably have, I don't know, 50 or 60 of these t-shirts over the years I've bought. Shoes wise, same sort of thing. I found one pair of shoes, one brand, love it. And so now I'm sort of just stuck with it. And so I just can't help, but I pretty much only I'll buy like nicer shoes, like dress shoes, other brands, but for sneakers is one brand.
Okay. You got to tell me the brand of the shirt and the brand of the sneakers. What is it?
Shirts, it's a brand called Johnson Motor Company. It's kind of random. They're based out of Silver Lake, down in Southern California. Not like a very common brand you probably have heard of. The other one is shoes is a company called D Squared. They're out of Canada. They do their manufacturing in Italy. It's like a higher end sneaker, but I love them. They're great.
D Squared and what was the t-shirt?
Johnson Motor Company.
Johnson Motor Company. All right. Well, they'll be very excited the fact that they were mentioned here on the Modern Selling Podcast,
Totally.
and we'll probably tag them so they can get excited as well. But that having been said, all right, I do understand people doing that. I specifically, so it's funny, both my older son, he's 13, and myself, we can't wear a specific type of shoe. And every time I put on a pair of Nikes, they don't fit my feet. I've got wide feet like the Fred Flintstone wide foot, right? So
Yeah.
Nikes have that narrow arch and that really high arch in the middle. And for whatever reasons, for the both of us, it's too tight and it hurts too much on the arch. So my son, he's got the super wide feet, just like myself. So I can't wear Nikes. But I do love the Hurleys. Those have been really good, and they've worked well for my feet as well.
Interesting. I can't wear Nikes either, but for running shoes, Hoka One, I think, are the best ones. But yeah.
Well, which one are they?
Hoka One,
Hoka
Hoka.
ones. All right.
Those are amazing. Yeah, I was like that's yeah. For running shoes, those are the best. I think those are the best.
Wait, where do you find them at the local Champs or something, or do you have to order them online?
You can get them online. Yeah, they're on Zappos or Amazon or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, there it is. Hoka One. I'll look into that for the running shoe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's get into some meat here. Now that the listeners had a chance to be able to get to know you kind of a little bit. And I'm curious, you and I both share something, a similar experience. I've been inside of sales now 25 years. I know I don't look at guys. Everybody who's watching the video, but I can tell you my hairline used to start right about here and it was all black and I didn't have a bald spot in the back right over here. So well, with that in mind, it's truly been 25 years. You have a very similar track record as well. Just, I'm curious, what has kept you inside of sales and sales leadership for this length of period of time?
Probably just because I'm a glutton for punishment, right? I think why else would we continue to do this job? No, I mean, I think it comes down to a few things. I mean, to me, I think selling is really about helping people. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions people have about sales in general, is that we're just trying to convince people to do things that they don't want to do. And in fact, really our job is to help people solve problems. And it's amazing when you help people solve problems, they will give you money. So that's really part of it. And so I think there's sort of just a great thing about that I love. It's also exciting, right? It's a very exciting thing to do. It's competing, and I'm an athlete. I like to compete. This is a way to continue competing, even into these, as we get older, and it's those ways to do that with work. So I enjoy that, and I think from a leadership standpoint, so many people go into sales. It's one of those interesting professions that people don't necessarily, more so today, but certainly probably when we were coming up, it wasn't like there was no sales classes or, things like that. It was just sort of, you did it. And that's an opportunity for us as leaders to take younger people and build them up. And I think that's been such a rewarding thing. And that's one of the things I love about sales, is just bringing these hungry young salespeople and developing them into really trained, sales, killers.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, over at Moogsoft, you have not only the sales organization, sales development, corporate sales, field sales, account management, but you also have customer success and customer support as well. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the interesting things about owning the whole piece, is that it allows me to sort of tie together some of these processes that can become disconnected, right? You have salespeople that are selling things that maybe they're overselling, and then you get these customer success teams that are stuck with trying to deliver on things that were not realistic, and so you get all this sort of weird infighting. And so by having it all under one roof, it's allowed me to make sure that that's not happening, because somebody that's involved enough cares about both things, and we care about what we sell in the front end. We care about how we deliver it and how we make sure customers are successful. So I found that it's been actually, I did the same thing at my last company, Malwarebytes. It was the same sort of thing. When I took over account management, we were able to really tie it together in a way that was a lot better than before.
Roger that. Makes total sense. And when we think about your track record and your history, one of the things that I think a lot of the listeners would want to know is the fact that you have been used in multiple occasions to kind of, I don't want to call it the cleanup guy, but to really come in and help take things from one level of the organization to the next level of the organization. And I'm intimately familiar with this as well. My background as a corporate executive as well was really the turnaround guy. So I would spend no more than 2 years in a role or a stint in the management role, come in, turn it around. And my fastest record of turning something around was 11 months, right? Like we went from the worst performing organization in the company to the number one organization in 11 months. And there's a recipe, there's a methodology that goes into this. So let's first talk about some of the things that new leaders, when they're coming into an organization, yeah, and they're looking at invoking change for the better, what are some of the things that you think leaders need to be thinking about when they're entering into an organization, and how to go about invoking this change for the better?
Yeah, and I think first of all, it's really about assessing your environment for understanding what you're working with. So I mean, there's obviously sort of a people component. Do you have people that you believe can do the job? Are they on board? Are they enabled? There's a whole process component. How do all these people sort of work together? I think of it sort of like a factory in a lot of ways. That's how I sort of think about the selling process. Is in my mind anyway, is that we've got to take stuff. We got SDRs that are prospecting, and even marketing maybe on the front end of that, and they have to hand things off to AEs, and AEs then have to hand it off. And I try to think about where are all the sort of points where the boxes are kind of falling off the conveyor belt that we need to go address, or where it's slow, or are there extra steps that are happening in that process that we could eliminate or speed up. And then there's, of course, sort of a technology component to this as well, because technology is right, the underpinnings of all these processes and things we're doing, and being able to automate and make things more efficient. And so do we have the right tech in place? If we do, is it being used properly? I think that's one of the things that I've seen a lot, is people invest a lot in tech, and they really don't know why they've invested in it or what value they're getting out of it, but they just keep renewing it. And there's maybe other things out there that could be better for them. So I think it's also really understanding, what does the tech look like? And then I think culture, of course, is a big part of that too, right? Because culture, I think, is one of the hardest things to sort of impact and control. But it's also so important. It's so foundational to making sure that everyone's showing up every day, that they're aligned, they're excited about what they're doing. And so I think that's another big part of something I'm trying to understand and look at.
Talk a little bit about sales culture, right? First off, describe what sales culture is. And I will say that Vengreso has the #1 ranked article on the word sales culture, the phrase sales culture. In fact, if you were to go out there and Google it, guys, you will be able to see the Vengreso article there. On page #1, I think it's position 1, maybe worse, position #2. So this is something that, as a turnaround guy, I'm insanely focused on. So you joined Moogsoft about 2 years ago, and talk a little bit about, in that time, how has sales culture maybe changed, and what are the things that you're looking for to create a top performing organization?
Yeah, and I'll probably talk about it more generically, not just about Moogsoft, I think, because Malwarebytes was a really similar situation. But I think, the first thing that I'm always sort of looking for and making sure of is that as a team, we're all aligned, that we're here to work hard, right? That, people have asked me over the years, oh, how did you become a VP, or how did you become a CRO, or whatever? And I always tell people the foundation of all of this is working hard, and you have to be willing and you have to want to do that. So making sure that people are sort of bought into this idea that we're going to work hard. I think that's the first thing. Second of all, it's, I think, really about making sure people are being accountable and taking responsibility. I think it's one of the biggest things I see with salespeople in general, or these sales cultures that I think are off, is that everyone's sort of waiting for something. I remember, when I started this one company, I was asking people like, oh, like I thought they were just sitting around. This is back, we were all in the office, and I was like, what's going on? And like, oh, I'm waiting for some leads to come in. And I'm like, okay. I was like, what? And then someone else, I was like, well, what's going on with this deal? Like, oh, I'm waiting on the channel partner. I'm waiting on this. I'm waiting on this. Man, everyone's sitting around waiting for someone to do something. And we need to be, as salespeople, take control of the situation. We need to be the drivers. We need to take accountability. We need to take responsibility. And there's always going to be a million reasons why it's not going to work, but let's go find the 1 or 2 reasons why it will work, and let's go execute on it. And getting people, again, I think, kind of buy into that. Something else is really important to me is how do you think about competition, right? It's sort of counterintuitive. We want a team full of these really aggressive salespeople a lot of the time, but then we want to make sure that they're nice to each other and that they work together. And so making sure that the team understands that, as I always say, our competition are the people that are outside the walls of this thing, or this virtual company, whatever it might be, right? And that's what we want to think about as competition. Internally, we want to be building each other up and helping each other out. And so trying to find ways so that the team is connected and bonding and working together on everything they're doing, I think, is important. And then I think that the last thing is really around transparency. It's really about and transparency in terms of feedback, I think, is really important. I think a lot of times people managers are afraid to give feedback, and people don't want to take feedback, or they I think to me that's something that's really important from the very beginning. It's like, I'm going to be very direct. We're all going to get feedback. You're going to give me feedback. I do a quarterly survey of the team, that's anonymous, and ask for really candid feedback, because that's how I'm going to get better. It's how you're going to get better. I think building that into the culture is so important.
So 4 things I heard: willing to work hard, take accountability, how to think about the competition, which includes those around you in the organization, and using that as a competitive drive, but also the outside competition, and then transparency with feedback, and being able to give feedback on your performance, both up and down. Those are the 4 things I heard. Did I nail that correctly?
You did. And the last one is a data-driven culture. I think that's sort of the last piece, is that if we can break down a lot of what we're doing into math. And I think a lot of times, salespeople, I'm just a good salesperson. It's like, okay, well, there's math behind what you do. If you need to, generate X amount of sales, how much pipeline is that? Well, how many accounts do you need to touch? Well, how many people in each account? How many phone calls is that? I mean, break that down and look at that. And every day you should know what your activities should look like. And if you follow that and you can build into making sure you're successful, I think people get so caught up with just the end part of that, about I have to hit my number, and they forget that there's actual math that builds into that. And I think that's probably the last piece I would say that's important to nail.
Commenting on your number 2, take accountability. Let's rewind back when you and I were carrying a bag. Could you imagine what our sales leader would have said if we had said to them, when they said, well, what's going on? Well, why haven't you, what your pipeline is low, or you haven't closed this deal yet? And then we just sat there and said, oh, I'm waiting on the channel partner. Or, well, I'm waiting for the customer to call me, and it's been 2 weeks, but they told me they'd call me. Or, right. I mean, like, I hear some of these things from sales reps, and I think back, what would my manager have said 15 years ago or 20 years ago if I said this? Like, I would have been eaten alive. Yeah. Right there. Just like, you see those movies where you just get swallowed, right?
Crushed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny because now what we hear is individuals, to your point, they say, well, I'm waiting for marketing to do this, or so-and-so. And I always tell people, like, if it's meant to be, it's got to be up to you. Like, you've got to take control of this and get out there and do it. Like, nobody, well, rarely, I can't say nobody. It's rare that a sales opportunity just falls on your door and all of a sudden you make President's Club as a result of that.
Right. Yeah.
It happens, by the way. It can happen, but it's rare, right? And so you've got to work to be able to, willing to work hard, to your point, and you've got to take accountability to be able to get stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100%. I think people, it's when people sign on to that and they buy into that idea, if everyone's doing that, everyone's gonna be so much more productive, because everyone's trying to work towards an outcome, versus people, again, just waiting for someone else. That's not my job. I'm waiting for someone else to do this or whatever. It's like in sales, your job is to get sales done no matter what. Like, get it done. Like, find a way to make it happen. That's just what it is. Yeah.
So your 5-step formula for a sales leader coming into an organization: assess whether or not people are willing to work hard. Are they individuals taking accountability? How are they thinking about competition and what's the word? Coopetition, right? Yeah, amongst the individuals. Do we have transparency in the feedback we're giving people down and as well as up? And are we a data-driven culture that we're actually looking at data to determine if the things that we're doing are moving the needle? Or did I nail that correctly?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good.
All right, good. So we've got the formula now in terms of what we look at to be able to look at turning around an organization. And what I love about everything you said, Mike, that's exactly what I'm looking at in that formula as well.
Nice.
And then as you think about all of this, there's one more element that I would add on, and that is after you've gathered the data, now you have to assess whether or not you've got the right people on the bus.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that in terms of, looking at, I'm sure you've done this, you've come in and you've had to assess whether or not you've got the right people on the bus. And for those of you that don't understand what that means, my international folks who are listening in, you're looking at the sales organization and saying, do I have the right people working in this particular role, or should I exit them out or find them a different role in the organization?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, so the key is, I think, figuring out where people stand today. So one of the first things I do is think about what are the elements that we're looking for, in these reps. And so it could be presentation skills or adherence to sort of policy or procedure, or what are these different things. And so I'll ask my managers to sort of stack rank their teams and try to understand, where do people sort of sit against these different components. And the way that I try to encourage my managers to think about this on the front end is that you can sort of think about it vertically or horizontally. So if you have everybody in a spreadsheet and you go horizontally, you're going, okay, well, Judy needs to work on these two things. Jim needs to work on these things. But then vertically, maybe the whole team is struggling with presentation skills. Maybe the whole team is struggling. So it also helps managers, I think, figure out where should they even be focusing their time. But I think around the people assessment part, pretty quickly, I find when new leadership comes in, you have people that are either get on board or they don't. And one thing I've tried to remind myself is not to judge too quickly. There's sometimes people on the front end, like a guy that I work with now at Moogsoft, I worked with at Malwarebytes. And when I first met him, I was not very impressed by him. I was just sort of like, oh man. But turned out he was super coachable. And even though at the front end, I was a little concerned about him, he kept coming back. And every time I gave him coaching, he got better. So not only did he want it, he was able to take the coaching and implement it. And I think that when you start to see people do that, it gives you the opportunity to build them up. But otherwise, yeah, you got to get rid of people that aren't going to buy into your new thing. And there are plenty of people who do not like the way that I manage. I'm very direct, and I know some people just don't like it. So I tell people, like, it's okay if you don't like. There are other people out there. There's other jobs out there that are better suited. It's not about right and wrong. It's about knowing what you like and what you don't like, and where you can be successful.
Let's talk about that for a second. Number one complaint that I get from anybody who's ever worked with me in my 25 years is, you're too direct.
Really?
The number one thing that people love, that for those that have worked for me, is that you're super direct, right? So it's a blessing and it's a malediction. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It depends on the context. If it's my wife, it's definitely a malediction.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, one thing in terms of, even when I'm interviewing people for our own company here at Vengreso, I interview every single person that comes in the door. And the one thing I always talk about is my direct approach. I'll never cuss at you. I'll never swear at you, but I will absolutely tell you when you miss the mark, and I will not celebrate successes that are only half done, right? Mm-hmm. Example, let's just say, Mike, you and I are working on a project and it's 10 things that you need to accomplish. And you come back and say, oh man, we did it. Let's take a look. And I look at it. And the thing that I do as a leader is, I don't look at the 7 things that you did right. I focus in on the 3 things that you didn't do, or you didn't do according to the plan. And that really can kind of weigh people down from just a morale standpoint, because I'm looking at it and saying, wait a minute, what happened to these 3 things? And they're like, but wait, look what we did with these 7 things, right? No. You need to fix these 3 things. And when will that be done? And once that's done, now 3 plus 7, that equals 10. Yeah. And until then, we're now celebrating success. So that's my style. And that doesn't mesh well with a lot of people, this direct approach style. But talk a little bit about this, because this could also be very, very painful style in a remote environment as well. Especially when you don't get to be like, hey man, give you a fist bump, give a, arm over the shoulder. Let me take you out to lunch and have a conversation where you can give this type of direct feedback. You're doing it over Zoom as an example. So how does this style of being direct help or hinder you in a remote organization setting?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, right? There isn't sort of natural sort of social constructs that are going to happen when you're in person. So I think some of that starts from before you even get there, and making sure that you have sort of people know that you care about them personally. And so like if you the first thing you do is just come in and just give someone like super direct negative feedback before you've sort of established some sort of foundation with them, I think that can be a challenge. But I think that's why there's other things that you have to do in a virtual environment, like get the teams together, virtual happy hours, get the team. And we try to at least get together, every year, hopefully every quarter in person, just to sync up and spend time. But at the end of the day, I'm sort of, I try to tell people, look, it's not emotional. It's very dry. And I'm like, look, if I don't tell you this stuff that you need to work on, how can you trust me when I tell you doing a good job that is meaningful? So it's like you have to. That's why I just try to explain it. Like, you get truth from me, good or bad. I tell the same thing to my kids. People ask me, I actually am very direct with my kids, sometimes maybe to a fault, but I tell them, do you want to know the truth or not? And most of the time, people want to know the truth in the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to position it. Do you want to know the truth? Interestingly enough, I was recently giving feedback to somebody internally who booked a meeting on my calendar and said, I want to show you what I'm doing with customers. And they reached out on IM and said, hey, are you willing to listen? And I said, absolutely. I'm sure I'll help you out for sure. So we get on and they start their, pitch and what they're doing and how they're presenting it. And I say, wait, why are you saying that? That's a very negative approach to starting the conversation. Oh, well, because, many customers like this and, I've never had a complaint about it at all. And then they went on to justify themselves. And I said, okay, you invited me to this call, right?
Right.
Yeah. You wanted my feedback, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're either going to take the feedback or you're not. And if you're not, then there's no need for us to talk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So, but this can be hard in terms of like, a remote organization. To your point, I like the remote virtual happy hours and whatnot. But what advice might you have for maybe other leaders working with remote sales teams that you think that they should do, especially when you're working on coming brand new into an organization? Is this like, a 300 person organization? Can you do really one-on-ones with each individual rep? Is that what you do? Or what advice can you give?
Yeah, I think first of all, and some, Pete from Atrium talks about this from Modern Sales Pros, is that you need to have a cadence. Every team, you need to come in and have some consistency around how you get together. So at MoveSoft, we do a Monday morning sales stand-up. It's 15 minutes. Everyone's there. I play music at the beginning of all my meetings. It's as a way to sort of set the tone. So every single meeting that I have, not like my forecast meeting, but like sales stand up, or we do an all hands, go to market all hands on Fridays. So I play music. So there's some sort of just give people sort of, kind of like when you watch TV shows, like you have this like opener and you have the closer, and there's a reason for that, right? There's like, our brains are wired around having consistency around experience. So I think first of all, making sure that there's some consistent experience around that. I think making space for a lot of people to meet with you, I think that's something that's really important. So like I have time blocked in my calendar that's sort of open office time. And I just tell people like, look, it's really hard to time my calendar, but like, I'm always going to keep this time open every week, and then a couple different slots, and people know about it. And I just work, people drop in, we'll talk for a few minutes. So I do give people a chance to sort of do that. I think, again, it is important to get people together. I think if you can afford to do it, it's just, even if you only did it once a year, getting people together, it just changes everything. And if you can't get everybody together, as a leader, go do regional things. It's like, look, you must have some pockets of people that are sort of near each other. Go do a dinner there, just get together with people, get some FaceTime. That's all the stuff that you just learn about people that you're never going to learn sort of over Zoom. Probably it's just too hard to get overly personal. It's not organic. It doesn't feel natural. We also have a thing at MoveSoft, which is not sort of sales specific, but it's called Coffee Connect, and people sign up for it. And it just sort of randomly links people up, and they have a virtual coffee. And it's a way for getting people together that may not normally do that. And when I do in-person things, I encourage people to not sit with people they normally work with. So we'll do like little events or games. We'll make sure that people are in groups that they wouldn't normally talk to. So that may also expanding their relationships across the org. It's hard. I don't know. I have a great answer for this. I mean, this was started in the pandemic, and then, now it's sort of the norm, but it was a hard transition for sure.
Yeah, gotcha. I've also implemented something called the direct sandwich. You know, so if you think about a concept of a sandwich, there's a piece of bread on the top and there's a piece of bread on the bottom, right? And then there's
Yeah.
all the, like the meat in between. So if this meat in between is going to be direct feedback on, you know, something that's not great or good, well, then your sandwich is going to be that bread is going to be the positive thing, and the bottom piece of the bread is going to be that positive thing, right? So focus in on the remote environment. Like you come into a meeting and be like, all right, Mike, yeah, great job today on, or I'm so glad that you're part of the, or really awesome on how you handled right? I do want to give you some feedback on, and then, you know, this is where I think you were underperforming at. And finally, I think one of the great things that you are doing is, right?
Yeah.
So you sandwich that, and so that they can hear that positive note about themselves at the beginning and at the end. And I think I found that, you know, when approaching something that like that, it really helps to, in a remote environment, for someone to walk away not demoralized, or not necessarily understanding that it's not coming from a good place as well, right? Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I think just to tack on to that, yeah, I totally agree. And I think that it's a really good point that if you're gonna be really direct with sort of things that need to be worked on, you need to make sure you carve out time to call out the good stuff too. Because I know you gave that sort of example earlier about the 10 things and the 7 were good and 3. And you know, I've struggled with that too, where people are like, why are you so negative? It's like, it's not that I'm negative. I'm just focused on the things that are broken. Like that's what I'm trying to fix. Stuff that's going great, it's like, that's great, it's going great, but so that's something I've had to personally work on. And I think it's a good reminder that as leaders, again, it's good to bring up the stuff you need to work on, but find time to celebrate the wins as well.
Yeah. Well, in being a turnaround guy, right? My job was not to come in and make everything the same that it was. My job is to fix the things that are broken, right? And the things that were working, hey, you don't touch those things, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. But obviously, you're being brought in to fix things that are broken. So we're going to focus there. And that was really hard for people to hear, especially as they saw, you know, a leader come in, and you knew that leader was designed to come in and just like shake things up. And they're like, well, geez, I thought everything was going great, right? And it might be in your microcosmic space of you as an individual, but it's not across the whole organization or team or group or, you know, division or whatever it might be. So that was also kind of hard that you know, really were challenged by that. And I think generally speaking, most leaders who leave a executive sales role, they're either found an amazing new role that gives them additional responsibilities, so you understand why they left, or they were asked to leave as a direct result of performance related problems. And it wasn't just them, it was the global team as a whole. So that's a hard pill to swallow when you see a new sales leader come in to an organization.
Absolutely. Especially if you may have really liked the person that was there before, even if, again, the team wasn't necessarily performing well, but you may have just really liked them. And that's a hard thing. And people, I've certainly had to work through that, of like trying to break down walls with people, like, you know, yeah. So that's a good point.
Talk a little bit about one of the expectations or the things that are needed, either current or future. Predictions are fine with a sales or revenue enablement organization, sales operations, revenue enablement, sales enablement, that you see are critical for the success of a sales team or organization now and into the future. What do you see as some of those things as critical?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is that we need to figure out as a sort of collective body of salespeople is I think a lot of this around prospecting. You know, there's been so much technology that's spun up that's made prospecting so much more efficient, and which is great. And I think in the early days of that allowed salespeople and sales development reps to extend themselves in ways that they couldn't have done without it. I think the downside now is that our buyers, our prospective buyers now are just so inundated. I mean, they always were, but it's even worse now than it's ever been. And I think that a lot of times this technology has sort of removed the sort of personal aspect of it. So I think that we need to figure out ways as salespeople in the community, how do we get the word out there and prospect in ways that really adds value and that doesn't just use tech to just like ruin people's lives with spam, because it's made everything else that's made some respects selling harder now because people are so used to just so much stuff coming in. I mean, probably you get the same. I mean, I get so much stuff coming to me every day and I don't respond to any of it. And I'm always thinking my team's out there doing the same thing. It's like, so I'm just trying to like, how do we reconcile that? So I don't know what my prediction is other than I think we need to figure out some way to reconcile and resolve that issue as a community, because I think it's a problem.
So I couldn't agree with you. Hear ye, amen, hallelujah, whatever you want to say to that. I think one of the big challenges, though, that I see, Mike, is a lot of the enablement leaders that are sitting in the roles that they're in. Unfortunately, the last time they carried a bag was 15 years ago, right? 10 years ago. They truly don't know what one, the buyer needs, two, how their sellers are engaging, and three, if it's good or bad, because it's based upon their feeling, not based upon data that's taking place. And so I think that's a big challenge. And I think, in my opinion, half the enablement leaders that are out there need to be turned inside out. Yeah. And they need to go to a different organization, a different role. And you need some great sales leaders to be right into that role, or even sales reps that are top performing reps and moved into those sales enablement roles that allow you to work a 1 year or 2 year long stint in these roles to really help other people accelerate. Case in point, I started something recently. As you know, Vengreso, we have our SaaS technology that helps people to expand out messages anywhere online. But our legacy was built on sales prospecting training education. So we took that education, put it right on top of Fly Message. So now we have the education that teaches folks how to be able to create one, messaging, and two, how to prospect with that messaging. And we have Fly Message that helps them to deploy that message anywhere online. So with that in mind, our legacy was built on helping sellers create good, solid messaging. My box has been inundated with crap, just pure crap. I got like 1,000 emails in this folder called emails that suck. And I've got like 20 called emails that don't suck, right? So I finally had it up to here. And this was the date of this recording for all you listening in is a Thursday. This past Monday, literally this Monday, I had it. I was like, I'm done. I'm going to let people have it. So here you go. I took a clip of someone's message that they sent me, and it was literally a follow-up message because I didn't respond to the first one. And it said, "Hey, Mario, I'm following up for my previous communication. I understand your time is valuable, so I apologize for my persistence." And my first thing was, why are you apologizing? You're supposed to be my peer. You don't apologize for being a professional. Anyways, so it says, do any of these dates and times work? And then he listed out 4 dates and times. That was it. I was like, I don't even know who you are. I don't even know what value you bring to me. I don't even know what problem you solve. I have no clue. So I had it up to here. So I wrote a big long post on LinkedIn, and I talked about the things that were good out of the message, right? Less than 111 words. He had 4 dates and times that allowed me to be able to look and see, like if I wanted to take a meeting. He provides meeting times at the morning, mid-afternoon, and afternoon, which is smart because I may be an executive that only does vendor meetings in the afternoon, as an example. And he provides a time slot 2 weeks out, which basically says he knows he's dealing with an executive, right? By the way, it could be he or she. In this case, it was a he. So then I said, now let's talk about the bad. First off, it's not personalized. This is a totally an automated message. You don't show me that you know me. You missed out on providing me value. Whatever product or service you have, I have no idea what business impact this gives me. Yeah, none, no clue. And then I say, I recommend that you provide 3 dates and times that are 2, 3, and 4 weeks out. If you do what's right in the personalization, giving me value that tells me what problem you're solving, then you give me a CTA that's 2, 3, and 4 weeks out. Why? Mike, I don't know about you. How booked out is your calendar at a minimum?
Pretty bad. Yeah.
At
Even
least how
6
many
months from
weeks?
now, it's still like, because all the recurring meetings, like even 6 months from now, my calendar's crazy.
So at least 2 weeks if you're
At
selling
least
to
2
a
weeks,
C-suite,
yeah.
right? At least. So
Yeah.
I got one today that said, can we have a meeting later on today or tomorrow? And by the way, he asked for a 7-minute meeting. And
Yeah,
was
I
like,
don't understand.
oh my God, who put these things together? So I'm really, I'm on a kicker. So I use Fly Message, which is our text expansion and writing tool. I created a shortcut, and my shortcut is dash BAD email dash bad email. And I literally tell the person, hey, I this is what it says right here. You'll love this. Hey, first name, thanks so much for reaching out. I'll be blunt. Your email is a bad email and does not engage me as a buyer. As a sales influencer, Mario, I'd like to help you and give you a guide. Here's a LinkedIn post that I did, which shows you how to connect and engage with me. See the comments. If I'm interested, I will engage. In sales, you must take the time to show your buyer that you know your buyer. And then I say, next, if you really want to get into my office, tell me that you signed up for a free Fly Message account and that you're using the tool. Now you become a customer, and as such, I would be a total jerk not to at least reply. I may not take the meeting, but as I might not have the need, or it may not be a fit, but it shows that you're crafty and it showed me that you knowed me. Okay. So I sent this out now 27 times from Monday to Thursday, just in 4 days. And do you know how many sellers wrote back? Thank you so much. Can we go ahead and book a meeting? Here are 3 dates and times. And I was like,
No way.
no, like you didn't even sign up. You didn't even sign up. I was like, I can't do it. But I think a lot of the problems exist with our enablement teams and our managers who are managing to a KPI.
Yeah.
Metric, a number. How many times did you reach out? What do you say to that? Is it really the metric, the number? Is it the data only counts in terms of how many times you touch someone? Or is it hyper-personalized, relevant content that you're showing that you thought about this individual that might get you the award?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I always tell people that it's like, I work backwards. So I start at close one, and it's like, if you don't have enough close one, look at pipe. If you have enough pipe, we look at activities. But at the end of the day, like, we really care about close one. So if you can get there with less activities, I do not care. Like, I really don't care. I really care truly about outcomes. But if you're not getting the outcomes, then we have to sort of dig into that. But the way I try to describe it, my perspective on it is that I say, look, you got to make sure that everything goes into one of three buckets. You've got your hyper-personalized outreach, which is the stuff that you're really putting time in, where it's like one-to-one, like you're researching them, their company, their situation, their person. You might have another group that is sort of, I would say, like somewhat personalized, where it's role-based and industry-based. Like, people in this role, in this industry, have this problem in general, and here's some examples you can share. And while that's not as personalized as one-to-one stuff, there's something there. And then I at the bottom, it's like, really try to avoid any of the like just kind of mass stuff. I think if you're going to do that, it needs to be with accounts that you have no idea, and it's just sort of almost like a marketing touch, where it's like invite them to webinar or something like that just to see. But I 100% agree. Like, at the end of the day, the personalized stuff is what you're going to get hits on, and we have to do that, and that's our responsibility to help people. I mean, that's and we can add value by doing that. So yeah,
sales is the art of helping.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, and love your 3 buckets. Makes sense. I think that's one of the challenges, though, we have with some of these great automation tools like the Outreaches, the Sales Lofts, the Apollos of the world. It allows us to be able to do more, no doubt. But is it actually helping us to engage with the buyer? And that's what's really important, I think, that we need to make certain of as sales leaders is, let's use automation, but let's make it smart and work for us, so that as a buyer, by the way, I'm remote. I have more emails coming across my desk than ever before, than even 3 years ago, right? Pre-pandemic. And so as a buyer, I'm looking at this and saying, I think this is relevant. I think this person actually wrote this message, as opposed to, dear God, if I get another message, I'm going to scream, and I'm in the industry, right? So it's really tough. And I think sales leaders need to pay special attention to this element of automation, smart, intelligent automation.
Yeah. The way that I describe it to people is that we need, and this is how I think about AI in general, actually, not just around sales, but we need stuff that's making us into like Iron Man, not iRobot, right? Iron Man has technology that's making him sort of superhuman through the tech, versus it's just like, I'm allowing the technology just to run it on its own. And that's a problem. I think we need to be thinking more like Iron Man, not iRobot. So yeah.
I love that illustration. Think more like Iron Man, or be more like Iron Man, not iRobot. That is a perfect illustration to close out this this discussion. So listen, if someone wanted to get connected with you, get a hold of you, is it through Twitter, LinkedIn? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter, but I think at Cabot, but I think, LinkedIn's the best spot. That's where I spend most of my time. So yeah, hit me up there for sure.
So if you reach out to Mike, make sure you reach out and let him know you heard him on the Modern Selling podcast. Please send a personalized message to him. And it's Mike Cabot, Cabot, and he's with Moogsoft. Mike, as with everyone on the show, I always ask my last question, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
It's got to be Caddyshack. I watched that when I was a kid, and I probably seen that more than any other movie my whole life. I love that movie.
I love it. Caddyshack it is. Well, hey, all of you listening in right now, please connect out with Mike and or connect up with Mike, excuse me, and make sure you say you heard him on the Modern Selling podcast. But don't turn that dial quite yet. We've got this closing message for you right now. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.